I know it's hard to believe, but spring practice starts next week. We want to talk about some of the vets you think will impress, some of the newcomers you think you will impress, and you know what? Who's going to impress more? It's hard to tell.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and thank you for making this your first listen every single day. Creeping up on 10,000 subscribers. We're going to get there one day, even if I have to have more children to do it. Jimmy, spring practice.
Seems extreme. Seems extreme.
It does seem extreme, but anything for likes. I've learned that from my YouTube community. Jimmy, next week is spring practice. It's a big deal. I think Auburn actually starts their spring practice today, technically. So, I mean, like everybody's doing this. Like
today, the 27th?
Today is the 27th, yeah.
Auburn is starting practice today.
Kind of wild.
What do they think? We don't. This isn't locked on the barn, but are they optimistic? I mean, you're around them a lot more than I am. I'm so focused in on my BOL message board, and I mean, so I don't do a lot of Auburn reading. Are they optimistic?
I would say yes, and it's in true Auburn fashion. I think they are cautiously optimistic with fans that aren't Auburn fans, and incredibly optimistic around other Auburn fans.
Oh, okay.
Like if I walk up to two of my Auburn friends talking to one another,
they're gonna be like,
but I can clearly hear them saying, "Hey, I don't see why we can't go 11-1. Maybe 10-2 is like the floor, but I think 11-1." And then I walk up, they're like, "Hey, yeah, we were just talking. We're thinking more like 8-4 or 7-5." And then when I leave, I can see them shooting me birds and saying, "Yeah, we really think it's 10-2."
Well, okay, so they were 6-6 a year ago. Were they 6-6 a year ago, or 7-5?
6-7, right?
Well, what I meant was
6-6 going into the bowl game. Yes,
6-6 going into the bowl game, which they lost and played. Frankly, their worst game of the year, which to me,
no. New Mexico State.
Well, New Mexico State, I guess. Although, ironically, and we joke, and we should joke because there's no excuse for that. But New Mexico State, actually, not a terrible football team. I didn't New Mexico State go to a bowl, and I think they were 8-4 or something, 7-5.
But I quit. As far as I was concerned, New Mexico State could quit playing football now. They've done all I've asked them to do. I mean, I can't ask them for anything else.
Right.
I don't think New Mexico State, we're not neighbors with New Mexico or anything, so I can't just be asking them to borrow sugar all the time. I can ask them for one favor in my life, the whole state of New Mexico, and that was it.
There's a connection there. Their OC at New Mexico State left there and is now the head coach at Louisiana Monroe, replacing Terry Bowden, and he's originally from Alabama, and they signed a wagon full of in-state kids at Louisiana Monroe. But anyway, my point is, if they were 6-6 in the regular season a year ago, and I'm setting a one loss, I can see Auburn improving just in the sense that it's a year two. But I'm going to have to study, and I will this summer, but I'm going to have to study what they've signed in the portal because, I don't remember enough. Obviously, they signed a good recruiting class, but I think between the recruiting class and the portal and it being year two, I'll bump them from 6-6 to 7-5. But there's no reason to think.
You got to factor in their schedule. And again,
sure. And we haven't studied this yet, which is why I started talking because I'm
their
sort
schedule's
of lost.
Super easy.
So 8-4 is something they could do.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. Because the reason I say their schedule is easy, they do have to go to Missouri. And again, we're off topic. But, look, if you're listening to this.
Well, you care about Auburn.
Yeah, you care about Auburn. So just bear with us a second. We'll get to these things like this stuff, I swear.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
That's why I started talking about it. As soon as you mentioned Auburn, I'm like, oh, yeah, I haven't given much thought to them since that gravedigger business. But we ought to consider if they're going to be good or not.
Jimmy cares less than I because I grew up in more of an Auburn-centric country in terms of where I grew up as a kid and my schooling and all that. But yeah, so I know their schedule. They got 3 soup cans on the non-con, and then they got another soup can in their Power 5 non-con, which is Cal at home. and they beat Cal last year, and this Cal should be worse than that Cal, and this Auburn should be better than that Auburn.
Okay. So they're 4-0 in the non-conference for sure.
4-0 non-con, if you ask me. They've got their road games. I mean, are perilous in the sense that it's Bama, Georgia, Missouri, Kentucky. Okay.
4 losses probably.
I could see 4 losses. I'm with you, but I could also see squeaking out 1 win.
Squeaking out 1 win, but okay. Let's say 1-3 there. So that's 5-3.
So that's 7-1, right?
Yeah. Well, no. 1-3 on the road, and 4-0.
Oh, what did I say? 7-1. No, you're right.
So it's 5-3.
5-3.
And then their home games, which will tell the tale. Then.
Home games are. They
I'm amazed
are.
You know this.
Now, give me a second, but I know that it's Vanderbilt. I know it's Oklahoma.
6-4.
You think they lose Oklahoma?
I think so.
I think this is Oklahoma's first taste of the road on the SEC, so that could make a difference.
It is, but I mean, look, they improve from year 1 to year 2 under Venables. I have a hard time believing they're going to go backwards. I think they'd be as good as they were last year, and they beat Texas, and I think they were just one spot out of the playoff, basically. I see Oklahoma as 8-4, 9-3.
And then Arkansas at home, that's a win.
Yeah, that's probably a win.
Now, they have no Mississippi State and no Ole Miss, no LSU. Oh, and A&M at home. That's who it is.
Could be a loss, but yeah, you're right. That's not a tough schedule. I mean, the difference is they don't play a non-conference game they can lose. And I'm not saying Alabama does in the sense that we're at Wisconsin, although I would say Auburn would lose at Wisconsin.
Oh, I think Auburn would lose. I think a lot of teams would lose at Wisconsin next year. And I'm not saying we're going to win yet.
Yeah, I guess. We're going to be favored to win, I would think, by 8 to 10 points, which is a big spread on the road. But, okay, Auburn 8-4. You know, if they finish 8-4 and me and you are going, it's the schedule, there's still going to be some optimism there, particularly if they sign another big-time class. I
mean, yeah, and they will. They got a commitment yesterday from, depending on the service, a top 250 or top 150 kid, depending on which one you look at.
Any guy that we have to. Okay, now it gets us back on Alabama because On3 had its top 300 yesterday for 25, and I'm still studying it. So fascinating. I love the initial rankings, but we have to recalibrate what we think of recruiting because Nick didn't spoil us. Nick ruined us. So let's get unruined and get back to being humans instead of fans of the cyborg that was Nick Saban. One thing we have to just accept, anyone in the top 300 is a really good player. That is just a fact. If you're in the top 300,
you're good.
Any commitment from a top 300 player should be celebrated. Top 300. And when you're like, and I mean, I could go over and over all the reasons why. For instance, NFL Combine this week. It's on my TV over here. We're talking about the Combine. I'm a big fan of the Combine. They invite 300 guys to the Combine, really 330, are invited to the Combine. See, so the best NFL prospects in the NFL, like, hey, we want to take a look about 330 of you guys. So that's one reason to think a top 300 player is significant. Here's number 2, Luke. This is dumb math-wise, but as you know very well I'm terrible with math, so I shouldn't use math analogies, but here we go. If the number 1 team signed the top 25 guys and the number 2 team signed the next 25 best guys, and you just kept doing that all the way through the top 25, the team signing the number 300 player is the number 12 team in the country.
Yeah.
Do we think that the number 12 team in the country isn't good? And see, that's another thing that Saban has ruined us on. Number 12 team is a good play. As a matter of fact, the number 12 team now is in the playoff, really.
And what's funny, the same people who will tell you, like, if Alabama goes on the road and loses to the number 12 team, let's pretend it's Wisconsin this year. Let's pretend. They'll go, see, DeBoer doesn't know what he's doing. And those same people will also say, these rankings are done by human people who don't know their butt from deep center field. And, I mean, look, I'm telling you, I don't care when you play Wisconsin. At Wisconsin, that's always going to be tough. Yeah. I also don't much care when you play California at your home place. That's probably not going to be a tough game. So, I mean, yeah, there will be outliers where California could be good and Wisconsin could be down. There could be some outliers littered throughout history, but for the most part, at Wisconsin is generally going to be a much tougher game than Cal at home. I'm not trying to pick on Auburn or Alabama here. I'm just saying that, because Wisconsin's also going to generally have better recruiting.
Yeah. Take this bet. If I said, okay, $10, is Wisconsin going to make the playoff? Yes or no, at least once in the next 10 years?
Oh, I'd easily.
To me, that's a yes.
Yeah, that's a yes.
Is Cal going to make the playoffs? Is Cal going to make the playoffs in the next 10 years?
No. Cal may not be in existence as a football program. They're playing in the Big Two next year.
No, they're playing in the ACC.
No, I'm teasing.
I know, but they're playing in the ACC, which is the worst of the 4 conferences, probably. Probably. And they're still going to be
kind of Big Two, even though it's ACC.
They're not going to have a winning record in the ACC, I don't think. I mean, if they do, 6-6.
Unbelievable that we went on 11 minutes and we
I've been fascinated. I think it's our best. I think it's our best show yet.
It is our best show yet. All right. Need to tell everybody about FanDuel. You know you love FanDuel out there. I love FanDuel out there. We all love FanDuel. You can't beat it with a stick because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. So all you have to do is bet one $5 bet on something easy, and then you get $150 in bonus bets on the backside of that when you win it. That's $150 if your bet wins. You can't beat that. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets or same game parlays. Those are awesome. Exclusive player or game props, like is X player going to have more than 5 rebounds or 10 rebounds or 5 assists or whatever. Those are a lot of fun and much, 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 much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's LOCKEDON, all one word. FanDuel is an official sports partner of NBA. I feel like we're hitting reset on the beginning of this show. Jimmy, spring break starts next week, and why don't you tell us about what you think about Auburn next year?
Well, they started practice today. I know it is. I got concerned. They're practicing a week before us. Like, oh no,
it's relevant. And Zach Blackerby's going to send us a slap on the wrist email, I'm sure. But that's
we're talking about his team.
Yeah, we're talking about his team. He should be
sitting here bragging on Peyton Thorne going 8-4.
So we start spring practice next week. Your spring countdown continues. I don't know where we left off. We'll talk about it later. But I just, you brought up something that I thought was kind of interesting. Like, what do you think in spring practice, like after the first week, do you think people will be talking more about a veteran that maybe has the lights come on, or a newcomer that's come in and really wowed everybody immediately?
Yeah, I think it's the nature of spring practice and the nature of fans that are so into the team that they're into what's going on at spring practice. Those fans are also really into recruiting. I mean, because that's the hardcore fans, the ones that want to know everything that happens at spring practice are the same fans that want to know everything about the players Alabama signing. So I think in general, everyone is obsessed with newcomers, guys they've never seen, guys that have never practiced, those early entry guys. There used to be, 3 or 4 year new early entry guys, and they would get all the attention. Now there's literally, I think off the top of my head, Luke, we have 22 freshmen early entry guys, just nuts. But I think Jalen Mbakwe and guys like that will be the talk of the spring, although I will throw Austin Mack in there because he's a quarterback. He's the new quarterback. That'll generate a lot of interest. But my point is, with the new coaching staff, Luke, I think my attention mostly will be focused on the veterans who are returning, because those are the guys that are going to make up the starting lineup. In general, there will be a couple of newcomers in the starting lineup. There is every year, but most of the lineup will be older players who were either starters last year or people returning from the team last year. So, everybody knows who the stars are: Tyler Booker, Deontay Lawson, Jahad Campbell, Jalen Milroe. I think they know who the stars are. But sometimes these veterans, guys that are returning from last year, they get lost in the shuffle between the stars and the newcomers, and we don't pay as much attention. But just a couple of names, Q Robinson on defense, to me, Quindarius Robinson, I think is going to be one of the best players on the team. I really believe that. I think he's going to be one of our very best players. You don't hear a lot of hype there, but I think he's going to go from, yeah, he played some to, wow, he's one of the best players on the team. Here's a guy on offense nobody talks about who's a darn good player who's probably going to benefit from the scheme change, and that's Kobe Prentice. That's another guy we probably don't talk about enough, who I think is going to prove this fall that he's one of the better wide receivers in the SEC. Not first team all SEC, not anything like that, but one of the better receivers in this league. So that's just a couple of veterans that I think people won't pay a lot of attention to because all the focus will be either on stars on the team or newcomers. And those returning vets just sort of get lost in the shuffle a little bit insofar as the fans. They're all new to the coaching staff. And I'm really curious. I can't wait for those first press conferences to hear the coaches talk about their opinions about the players that they're seeing for the first time. And while I'm on that, I should say, because you probably don't even know this, and I don't know it, we're sort of speculating, but we're also believe this is true at BOL. We think we're going to hear from assistant coaches throughout the spring and not just the head coach. In other words, this Kalen DeBoer is making the program a little more accessible to the media. And we think we're going to get access to practice and also press conferences with coordinators, if not other assistant coaches throughout the spring. So that's fascinating for us media guys because it gives us so much more meat to chew on.
It does. I mean, look, maybe I'm looking at it glass half empty, but I feel like it works both ways. The thing about not getting a lot of access was it forced you to be creative and try and figure out, okay, well, let me put the pieces together in my own mind and put a story out there that is loosely based on some fact and has a lot of opinion and try and figure out something fun versus now we're going to sort of know most everything. And I say most everything, that's stretching it. I understand I'm being hyperbolic, but you're going to know more stuff. And it's going to be so much information that maybe it's even harder to put the real thing together.
Well, put it this way, I think fans could watch practice and instead of everyone knowing what happened, you're going to get 1,000 different opinions as to what happened. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I still think the coaches telling us, to some extent, now it's always going to be coach speak. No coach is ever going to get up on the microphone and say, I'm really worried about left guard. We're terrible there. I mean, no one's going to say that.
Rick Pitino on line one.
Well,
he said, Rick Pitino said, like, he was talking about guys. He was like, this guy can't even dribble. This guy's terrible going to his left. Now, they ended up winning against Creighton this weekend, and he apologized. But, I mean, if I were a player, I'd be like, Coach, bro. But anyway.
That was something. That was a new approach that Pitino had there. My players.
Let me publicly
my players suck, and let me tell you exactly which one of my players are terrible. But Nate doesn't hold much back. Nate doesn't do coach speak. Nate's called out individual players on our team this year for playing poor defensively.
Nate does it in a way that it wasn't quite as bad as what.
No. Patino,
like he had a menu, a list. He was like, okay, number 7 can't dribble. Number 8, his mom's going through his third divorce. That's got him messed up mentally. Number 9, and I was like, wow, he is really laying it on pretty thick.
And I hated it because I'm always kind of pro players, and I hated it. It kind of to me comes across as, hey, don't blame me.
Yeah,
don't blame me. Well, actually, you're responsible for all of it.
Well, and then Rick Pitino wore that white suit. I am blaming him for that.
That was especially, he's not the most tan guy.
He's almost vampiric, I think is the word.
It could be. If you were going to say
that word enough.
Yeah, but I think it was highly apropos there. If one head basketball coach is a vampire, it's got to be Pitino, right?
Oh, there's zero doubt. It's him. All right, let me tell everybody about Game Time. I can't remember if Zach told me to quit saying that I need to tell everybody about blank. and then doing the little video thing, or he said, I like that. Zach, if you're listening, please tell me, because I don't remember and I don't feel like emailing you today.
It's a strange thing about it. Did he tell me this is great or did he tell me it was bad? We went on a date and I can't remember if she said, let's do this again, or I am calling the police if you text me again. I can't remember which one.
It was one of those two. Every date I ever had ended up like that. Anyway, Gametime is awesome. I've used Gametime a gazillion times. I'm maybe stretching it, plus or minus a gazillion, but I've used it a bunch. I love Gametime. Look, and you can go get a $20 discount right now when you use code Locked On. Go to Gametime, download that app. Look, I've told you, I've used it to send my son to the World Series. I have used it for the Alabama-Tennessee game. I've used it for the Alabama game this year in Legacy Arena when the Tide played earlier. I think they played Liberty in basketball. That's a long time ago. But I've used it, I mean, seriously, like 6 times. And it really is the best. It's so much fun. You've got to go. I used it for the Texas A&M game, Alabama-Texas A&M basketball game this year. It's so much fun. I used it for the Dolphins game. So, I mean, you can use it for whatever. And you know you want to get it. And you can see your view from your seat. That's what makes it so awesome. There are last-minute tickets and flash deals and zone deals, all this stuff. And it's fantastic. You will love it. It's different than any other ticket servicing app, I promise you. Terms do apply, but just download the Gametime app and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Lowest price, guaranteed, and you get those last-minute tickets. You're going to love Gametime. All right, so Jimmy, I'm going to just bounce around here for a minute this last segment. You know, first thing I will say, I think it's going to be a veteran that is the most talked about. I sort of put in the off to the side there, it says who impresses more, newcomers or veterans, and I don't know if impresses is going to be the word I want. I'm going to say the most talked about guy, and this probably is cheating because he's the most talked about guy every single year in every spring practice is the quarterback, but I'm going to say Jalen Milroe is the most talked about guy one way or the other. Either people are going to say, oh my God, this new system has unlocked a cheat code for Jalen Milroe, watch out world. Or it's going to be, oh, my God, he cannot throw a slant. He cannot throw a 10-yard out. He can't do X. He can't do Y. And we need somebody else quickly. I don't think anybody's going to be like, hey, Milroe's coming along nicely, but he's had some bumps in the road. I think people are either going to have the feeling Milroe's going to bust out on the national scene and win the Heisman, or he's going to flame out and not be the starter by the time we play Wisconsin.
So many takes about Jalen Milroe are just unreasonable. No one's read more than me because I've managed the largest message board in Alabama football, in the BOL roundtable. And the takes on Milroe, I've read them all of them. They're so extreme. They're either extreme negative, and folks that are extremely negative on Jalen Milroe, y'all are just, it's just wrong. It's completely incorrect.
Y'all wrong for that.
Yeah, it's just incorrect. I'm talking about the extreme negative takes. I'm not talking about he's got a lot to work on. That's a reasonable take. I'm talking about the extreme negative takes. Those are just so far off base. It boggles the mind. There's also some extreme positive takes to me about Jalen Milroe that I think are also off. The total, I guess you'd call them, for lack of a better word, fanboy takes. They're totally off too. Jalen Milroe has a lot to work on. He also has a brand new offense. We could list multiple traits that need to improve with Jalen Milroe. So basically, I just see him as an extremely gifted kid who has a ton of upside, who has a lot to work on. And that's what I would say about him. And to me, that's a reasonable take. But boy, you get the extremes with him from some fans. He's, I'm not even going to repeat the negative or the positive takes because they're just so far off of the reality. But I'm with you, Luke. You said one thing. I couldn't agree more. I think people need to accept the possibility that Milroe thrives in the new offense.
No, I'm with you.
And throwing it more often with this design of the offense, which is designed to pop receivers open and get multiple receivers in the route tree and multiple receivers open while also not abandoning the run game. I I think there's a world of possibility here. And hey, now I'll use the extremes. I think the ultimate outcome for Jalen Milroe, Luke, I can see him winning the Heisman Trophy next December. I'm not predicting it yet. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but I do not rule that out. I'm not saying that's impossible. I think it's quite possible. He finished sixth a year ago. All 5 guys that finished ahead of him are all out of college football. So he's the returning guy that's got the most Heisman votes. So that's not crazy that Jalen Milroe wins the Heisman Trophy next December. I also think it's not crazy to say that with the new offense and the new scheme, that he loses the job and someone else is the starter. I think that is something that's possible too. He was benched last year for not playing well. That could happen again, just like him being in the Heisman race could happen again. So that's the range of outcomes I see for him. Win the Heisman, lose the job. And when the range of outcomes is that wide, he's easily the most fascinating player on the team. Easily. Who else can you say that about on the team? No one. No one's going to win the Heisman or lose the job. I mean, Justice Haynes, Jan Miller, Jeremy Bernard. I mean, these guys are all really good players, but I'm not going to say, well, they might play a lot or we'll never see them again. But you can say that about Jalen Milroe. That's what makes him extremely interesting.
Tomorrow, I'll be calling the Buckhorn basketball game. I'm going to be at the AHSA finals today calling games, but none of them will have a prospect like tomorrow's game with Buckhorn when they have Caleb Holt, who's only a sophomore. He's wrapping up his sophomore year.
He's the best sophomore in Alabama, right?
He could be the best sophomore in the country. And he could reclassify. He's talked vaguely about it. I don't know that he will, but
the new thing.
He's a problem. Alabama really would love to have him. I know Auburn would too, but I think everybody would love to have him. He's either number 3, number 4 player in the country, according to most services. He's a thing. And finally, I just want to say this, Jimmy, 30 seconds, but I'm going to tell you, but just because everybody's chimed in on it, I'm so anti-court storming. I think we've got to stop this immediately. I don't care if you think Kyle Filipowski or Caitlin Clark or going back to Jermaine Burton, that they all created their own little catastrophes when the storming or the field storming happened. It still happened. And when you're doing that, and if you're only storming the court if it was an emotional game. And so if it's an emotional game, you're storming the court, these kids put everything on the line, and you're flying at them with your phones in their faces, and you're yelling at them, and you're cussing at them, and you're telling them, hey, you have to be a bigger person. I can be a complete jackass, and I can do whatever I want to. All you have to do is look at the Filipowski tape and look at how one guy specifically had his phone in the face of Coach Shire and then was yelling. You could tell he was saying some words that were not good because of the mouth movements. But I think court storming has got to go. I think it is way too much of a liability for everybody involved. And if I were a player, and everybody says, well, we've done it forever and it's never been a problem. Times have changed. We used to be able to get on a plane with a tube of toothpaste this big. Now I've got to take a tube of toothpaste that big. You know why? Because some people decided, hey, we can make something explosive out of this amount of toothpaste or something.
And there's always has been a problem. Players have always gotten hurt. Alabama had thousands of dollars of property destroyed in the Tennessee football. When they rushed the field, Alabama lost lots of equipment over that.
Who pays for that? And I assume we paid for that.
I don't know that Alabama did. I don't know the answer to that, so I can't sit here and say that I know. I'm sure Alabama asked Tennessee to pay for it. I have no idea what happened.
And also, they said, somebody was saying, I called in another show yesterday and brought this up because they were like, well, maybe we could give them like a minute grace period. I'm like, you know what? If you're playing for the SEC title game, and let's say Janai Broome loses it at the last second at Arkansas, and he's on the court and he's like down about himself because he missed a shot or missed a free throw that would have tied the game, sent it to OT, whatever. And he's on the court and he's like, just kind of sulking in the moment, which is understandable. And then all of a sudden, there's a counter up there that says 30 seconds till you can storm the court. And Janai Broome's got to gather himself and get up and get out of your way.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Stupid. It's the safety. We're so worried about safety everywhere else. Let's worry about the safety of the kids when a stampede of humanity is charging towards them angrily.
Yeah, can you imagine if it was your kid, your child, I mean, your son or daughter that's on that court? I mean, but I'm the same way. Look, I would even go further. I don't know what to do about it. I'm all for ending it. That's fine too. But I know this, speaking for myself, and obviously it sounds like Luke agrees. If a fan comes out of the stands onto the playing court as either court storming or streaking or whatever you want to call it, but if a fan leaves their seat and goes onto the playing field and gets the crap beat out of them, good.
Here's my thing.
I mean, I will never blame any player. If Alabama fans storm the court and an Auburn player beats up the Alabama fan, good. I mean, I'm not talking about playing favorites, or fans don't belong on the court. That's the player's province. And if players feel threatened and they lash out physically, I get it. And I've never been upset at any of it. And the Filipowski thing, the Caitlin Clark thing, which is just outrageous. It's all outrageous. And to me, it's getting worse.
Well, not only that, Jimmy, here's the thing. And they said, well, I don't want to take away all the fun. And I said, well, first of all, you're not. You still won the game. Enjoy it. Secondly, and look, I don't mean this as like being a, pinky out Alabama fan. I don't think we've ever stormed the court or stormed the field. And
it's one of the reasons we're pretty we get upset about it.
We're hoity-toity.
It gets done to us. We don't do it. I mean, which is one of the great things about Alabama is we've done it before. I do have vague memory. We stormed the court when we beat number 1 Arkansas back in maybe the 90s.
Jimmy, I was there.
So?
I was in the game. I was at the game, not in the game. I don't think we did. I think there was a massive humanity of the players. Brian Pasick was on that team, and I might see him today. I need to ask him about
him.
I don't remember.
I thought we might have. That's 30 years ago now.
But now here's what I remember. Ask yourself this. Because Caitlin Clark did get hit. Whether you think she initiated contact, she got hit. If Caitlin Clark, who is the biggest star in basketball, probably men or women right now,
true.
If she had gotten hurt and we're out for the season, to me, I would sacrifice her being well and being able to just finish out this season. She has another year if she wants it. I would sacrifice that to never court storm again. Meaning, I would give up court storming forever if it means to sacrifice it, I would have to give up one guy missing a game or one girl. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want any star player to miss any time ever for anything associated with a court storming, ever.
Or field storming in football, same thing.
Same thing. And again, we're running over, so we got to go. But the Jermaine Burton thing, we talked about it. It was ugly. It looked awful. It's grainy footage. You can't really tell exactly what happened, but it looked pretty awful. But I'll say this. As far as I know, she didn't sue anybody. She didn't do it. So maybe she was culpable in this. And I'm not trying to say
lawyer would tell you if you contribute.
I'm not trying to say any of that. What I'm saying is, when you get out there, like you said, if you get in an ocean full of sharks and there's blood in the water, don't be mad if you get bit.
Yeah, you're trespassing. You're trespassing. It's like going into someone else's home and you're upset that they punched you. They might shoot you. I mean, I'm just saying, it's trespassing. It's trespassing. You're not allowed to be there.
And you and I both said, Jermaine, we would have suspended Jermaine Burton now, but we weren't privy to what Jermaine's story was because it never got out. Maybe she said something god-awful to him that you can't say to somebody, and that triggered him in an emotional moment. Again, I don't think it's justified. I'm just telling you, when you get out there as a player and you're in an emotional moment, last second loss, you're walking off the field, first loss of the year, or walking off the court, first loss of the year, whatever it is, and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, you blankety blank blanky, you just blanked it all blank. And all of a sudden you lose your cool. I get it.
I get it totally.
So, all right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.